Welcome to episode 43 of the Just Happy to Be Here podcast. It's me, Tanner, and as always, I am just happy to be here. On today's episode, Taylor and I look back on 1 year of the coronavirus pandemic and discuss a few things that we learned through the steps forward and steps back. Plus, we answer a question of the week. So with that, here is episode 43 of the Just Happy to Be Here podcast. You went on went.
Went on went.
So when I'm done editing the podcast, I upload it to go out to all the different podcasting channels.
Yeah.
And the other day I realized that all I uploaded was your audio, but I caught it like right away.
Oh man.
So it wasn't a big deal, but my chest did one of those things where I thought the entire world was ending.
Oh yeah.
It turns out it wasn't. And
good deal.
Yeah, but I'm sure most of our listeners are like hovered over their phones waiting for the next episode of the Just Happy to Be Here podcast to pop up.
Yes.
And
that's true.
So maybe there were a couple, because I was like listening back to it and I was like, Taylor sounds really clear. And I'm like, but he's not talking to anybody. He's literally just Taylor.
He sounds like an insane person.
Finally, the people get what they want. Just Taylor.
No. Well, especially, not that. And then especially not like that, where I'm just responding to nothing. And just,
right.
He is carrying on a conversation with absolute nothingness.
Well, it's really funny to listen to it because, like, all of a sudden you're quiet and then you start laughing, or you know, just like interject, and it's fantastic. Anyways, this podcast has two voices on it, not just one.
Yes.
And this is our 43rd episode of the Just Happy to Be Here podcast.
Crazy.
So, congratulations. I feel like 43 is one of those numbers that just kind of gets like lost within the shuffle of numbers.
For sure.
It's very important. It's very important because you can't go from 42 to 44 without 43.
Sure can't.
But I think, like, when we're 43, one day you and I will be 43 years old.
Uh-huh.
Do you even have a birthday party for that? Or a celebration? Or is that more of like a, all right, next?
No, I think you get like a gift card to like a Home Depot, and you move on.
I think so.
And you move on with your lives.
It's like the old standard gift, right? Just here's this and probably like some Advil. Yeah. Maybe
like a half price appetizer from Applebee's.
Oh yeah, yes.
Yeah.
I was gonna say Bloomin' Onion, but that is not Applebee's.
It's not Applebee's. It's Outback Steakhouse, in fact.
Okay.
And probably more expensive.
Probably. If you have to choose between Chili's and Applebee's,
yep.
Where does your heart go? Where do your feet take you?
Just because I'm a fan of a certain Instagram account that you and I are fans of.
Middle Class Fancy.
Yeah.
Yes.
I want to say Chili's, but I honestly don't know if that's true. I think my heart might take me to Applebee's.
See, I think my feet are taking me to Chili's. I want the chicken crispers.
I hear ya. I want
the chicken crispers.
I honestly cannot name a menu item at either of those places right now.
I don't know why I remember that. But I do. And this podcast is in no way affiliated to Chili's or Applebee's. However, today is March 11th, 2020, and there's a couple of national days that we have to hit.
We do have to hit them.
Speaking of Applebee's, today is National Johnny Appleseed Day. Now, I know Appleseed and Applebee's are different, but we're both talking about apples here. However, did you know that Johnny Appleseed's real name is not Johnny Appleseed?
What?
I've been lied to my entire life.
Yep. What's his name?
It's John Chapman.
Ugh.
Yeah.
No.
Not even.
No, it's not.
Not even Johnny.
No.
I can remember in like elementary school we would celebrate Johnny Appleseed Day, and
yeah,
it was very strange. But it felt like even then it felt very forced, and like we needed to make it. We just needed to do something with today. Like, okay,
that's wild.
We'll celebrate you.
Because
there's a couple.
Go ahead. You celebrated this as a kid For real?
We learned about it. We talked, like, we didn't have, like, my mom wasn't like, we're going to have, applesauce and apple pie and apples for dinner.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. Man. And diarrhea for breakfast.
Oh, as you can only... I don't want to imagine, but you can only imagine. Now, there are a couple of other things. March 11th gives us this weird list of national days.
Yeah.
And there's a couple that I just kind of want to throw at you. And we can talk about them, but we could be here all day. Now, the first one is a job that probably isn't recognized quite often, and it's National Funeral Director and Mortician Recognition Day.
Wow.
So...
That's amazing.
I understand, like, this is like it's a very important job.
Yeah.
But not until you need it.
Yep, that's true. That's true.
So we are going to give them just a little bit of time and say thank you for all that you do, and one day we'll do.
Yes.
But I also don't want to have anything to do with you for quite a while.
Right. I also have to briefly, just in case they're listening, give a quick shout out to old friends from Montevideo, the Tabist family, who are funeral directors and morticians. So,
now this is...
Thank you, Tabists.
For sure. Now, this is going to sound weird, but think about, like, that must be one of the most underappreciated jobs and overlooked jobs.
Yep.
But wildly important. And to an extent, it's like it is quite the Lord's work,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It is something. It must just be you must have to be very strong, a strong individual to do this job. So.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
Now, there's no easy way to make this segue, but today is also National Oatmeal Nut Waffles Day.
Wait, what?
Why are you eating that? Oatmeal nut waffle.
Oatmeal nut waffles?
It's why I don't. We're moving on.
Have you had any other flavor of waffle?
Sorry. Why would you want that flavor of waffle?
Yeah,
it's not even at it's not at Waffle House.
No, I don't even want to talk about it anymore.
You can get pecan waffle, pecan waffle at Waffle House.
You
That's
can.
Some good eating.
That is good.
That is some good eating. Now today is also National Promposal Day.
Now my brain goes in a direction. Is it what I'm thinking it is?
It's exactly what you're thinking of. These days, when people want to go to prom, they propose to another individual, asking them to the prom in a way that is extravagant, over the top, and makes a lot of other people uncomfortable.
Yep.
And feel inferior.
Yeah.
I dodged this when I was in high school. I dodged this for a lot of reasons. Mostly, I didn't have enough money to go to prom, so I broke up with a girl.
There
because
you
I didn't have enough money to go to prom. It was, I mean, obviously, it was the. Obviously, I had a lot of good guidance in my life at the time, and so I went to prom with a couple of friends and didn't have to ask anybody. We basically were like, so we have to go together, correct? Yes.
Yeah.
I can't imagine having to, like, propose to somebody to go to a dance.
Yeah.
It just feels like a lot of weird pressure, and who needs that in their life?
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm sure I'm wrong. I am sure I'm wrong. I am just happy to be here, but I am sure that I am wrong.
I don't know, man. I feel like maybe save the extravagance for the proposal someday.
Yes.
You know?
Yes. I would 100% agree. Now, the last thing that it is today is National Worship of Tools Day, and I think you said it perfectly. And I don't know what to do with that. It's always weird when preparing this segment of the podcast, looking at what are we going to talk about? Like, what's going to set the tone?
Yeah.
And what we have here, we rolled the dice and we didn't get anything that was substantial. Now, National Funeral Director and Mortician Recognition Day, that is quite substantial. I don't want to. However, how much can we talk about that? right?
Yeah.
And you know what? We're just going to make this really rough transition into what we're talking about today.
Yes.
Today is March 11th, and do you remember what happened on March 11th, 2019, Taylor?
Yeah, I think you mean 2020, but yes, I do very well.
Oh, I do. I do mean 2020. Yes.
Yeah, I do remember it well. Do you remember it well?
I remember March 10th better than I remember March 11th. What happened on March 10th was me and two of my good friends, Justin and Adam, we drove from Nashville to Memphis and watched the Orlando Magic play the Memphis Grizzlies.
Mm-hmm.
And the Magic won. I know you're wondering. Edge of your seat. There it is. But we went, and there was rumors and rumors about something bigger that was happening.
Yeah.
Right? Something called COVID-19, and people were like, it's really, really serious. And we were quite naive, and we're like, well, I'm sure it's something, but like we'll probably get over it pretty quickly. And we went to the game. We sat in an arena of 20,000 people. We sat around strangers. We weren't wearing masks. We took samples of things that they were giving out and ate them in front of other people. And the next evening, so March 11th, I'm sitting on the couch about to watch more basketball because I have a problem. And our good friend Kyle Frazier sends me a text and is like, everything's getting canceled. He's a huge NBA basketball fan as well. It's like all the games are beginning to get canceled.
Yeah.
And I'm on Twitter and I'm seeing this game's canceled, this game's canceled, this game's canceled. The NBA has postponed the season. And it was in that moment that I realized, well, this is serious. This isn't like somebody got the flu. This is something that is bigger than us, and if we are canceling events that bring in millions of dollars at from one day to the next, it's got to be much bigger than us, and we've got a situation on our hands. And then right after that happened, that's when I canceled a tour. I was supposed to go out to Nebraska for a week and speak at some churches and schools, and I canceled that, and then it began. We entered into this season of, well, now what?
Yeah.
What about you? What do you remember?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Mindy and I, my now wife, my amazing wife, then soon-to-be fiance, so girlfriend. We were, that's how that works.
My pre-fiance.
Yeah, pre-fiance.
And my pre-wife.
Right.
The post-promposal phase of our life.
Definitely. Very post-promposal.
Yes.
We were on a trip actually that week to see my now in-laws in Aurora, Colorado.
Oh,
and we were, I remember on that trip, we were enjoying time with my in-laws. We were enjoying time at like places like Garden of the Gods. We were seeing amazing mountains and around a lot of people. Similar to being at an NBA game, tad of a different context, but we were, just kind of everything was normal, and I remember things started to feel weird and set in, like kind of by the day. It felt like, and at first it was like by the day, then it like towards the end of that week, it was like by the hour things were changing. And it was like we were finding out from back home here in Des Moines and then also in Minnesota, because that's where I was living at the time, like school was getting like postponed for a month, and we were hearing about all of these things starting to happen, just like bang, 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 one after the next, like total disruption of normalcy. And it was weird at the time because it didn't immediately affect us, but we were hearing this news. And then I think the biggest one was being at church that Sunday. I visited the church that is now my church, High Point, in Altoona, and they did a service entirely online, and did the first of the virtual services, and it was eerie. There was nobody. Like, we were at their location. They were meeting in an elementary school at the time, which we no longer meet in because of everything. And it was totally empty. There was just like, I don't know, maybe 10 to 15 people there, and it was like, what is coming next here? And this is so strange. And
yeah, the question of like what is coming next?
Yeah,
that was the scary thing, is because you just, pre-pandemic, we lived in this time where it was like, I kind of know what to expect. Like, I kind of know what's around the bend.
Yeah.
But when the pandemic began to sit in, and like, oh, this is it. That was the thing that kind of crawled inside of me, was the unknown, and this fear of like, well, how long is this going to last for? Right. And then we just began to ride this wave of the pandemic, and you look at the beginning of it, and the internet was a fun place to be, because people were like, we're gonna make it through this. Everyone was cheering each other on, even communities here, like in Nashville, we would do like an evening howl, right? So at like 8:00 every night, people would go out on their doorstep, bang pots and pans, and howl like a wolf, and that was like. And it was this weird thing, but it was like in celebration of first responders and hospital workers, and that's, and then we can, so as the pandemic went on and as winter crept in, everything just kind of got felt a little more heavy, more difficult, weird. Everything just became. I mean, it's been said a million times in a million different ways. But my question for you is, we aren't through it yet. I understand that, and we are still in many parts of the country taking it very seriously, and we should. But for you, what is something that you've learned about, life and God in all of this?
Yeah.
Or maybe a better question. How about this? A better question is, what has God been teaching you in this?
Yeah. Well, I would direct my attention back to something you just said, Tanner, about the unknown, of not really knowing what's coming next. And there was a lot happening in my life, in mine and Mindy's lives at that time, in addition to COVID as well, which is maybe a whole other conversation for a whole other day. But there's just a lot going on, and I can remember having so many thoughts of, I don't know how there's another side to this. I don't know, and like what you said, I think is spot on, where it's like, I feel like I've been able to, somewhat see ahead a little bit. Obviously there are no guarantees, and what I know to be true biblically is that only God is sovereign, only God is knowing what is going to happen.
And wasn't that so difficult? Maybe not so difficult to believe, but that he is sovereign, and that he knows what's going to happen. Didn't that feel like, at least for me, it was like this invitation to trust, but also like, couldn't you just tell us? Would love to know about that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. That is the temptation, and that is the I guess that focus is the temptation, where it's like, I just want to know, and that is so the sin in me, the humanness in me, that wants to be in control, that wants to know, and if I could just have all of that, I wouldn't need God. And I think that is the point, and that is the biggest thing I learned, where I was looking at this, what felt like just this drop off, where I was like, I don't know how we get to the other side of this. And then over and over again, I saw God stay true to the promises of his word. Just the words of Paul to the Ephesians, that he would provide everything that we need, not necessarily what we think we need, but exactly what he knows we need. And I can look back now going, man, has my trust grown and I wouldn't have that. It would not have grown like that if I wouldn't have had the opportunity to look into what felt like just an empty kind of drop off into an abyss.
Yeah.
And go, man, Lord, I have nothing if I don't have you. I know what your word has said, that you have, both in Deuteronomy and then reconfirmed in Hebrews, that you would never leave us nor forsake us. And I found that to be true every time. God provided jobs when I needed them, transitions when I needed them, provided paths through, again, difficult circumstances, even above and beyond COVID, in ways that just seemed unimaginable to me at the time. And
Yes.
and
Yeah, like,
so it's
turns
just
out
crazy.
he wasn't lying about that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
turns out what he says is actually true.
Yeah.
I think throughout a lot of this, the word, grace keeps coming back up.
Yeah.
And kind of learning how to give grace to ourselves in the midst of the unknown, and not like accomplishing tasks or figuring things out or being perfect in this, in the great unknown, I guess. And then to see how we give grace to other people and to ourselves, and to think, well, he gives, he does it so much better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also, like, throughout this, throughout the past year, I think, the word's just happy to be here. You and I, we say it as like as a response and as a joke from time to time, but like, I think really those words made this little impact on me, because there were days where I was not just happy to be here.
Yeah.
When you see, your friends' parents passing away, or, neighbors being taken away, and it was a sad time, and it's still, hard, and there's going to be a lot of things that we wrestle through as we move forward. Mm-hmm. But there were days where I was not just happy to be here, and then there were other days where, like, really, especially early on in the pandemic, where I was like, so we all get to hang out at home, watch movies, have the windows open, the sun is shining, we get to play, we just got a puppy,
Yeah.
I truly am just happy to be here. And then, as time dragged on, you kind of realize, you keep saying just happy to be here, and you're not.
Right.
But you're here, and they're still good, and you got to find it, or you got to look a little harder. I think, one day when you and I have kids, we'll be able to describe to them what this time was like. And I for sure am going to share with them, like, that's what you heard about the pandemic? No, it's 10 times worse than that.
Yeah.
It's like the stories of people when they would, talk about having to walk to school, and it was really like,
Right.
just down the street and to the left. But they were like, we had to walk uphill both ways, and we didn't even have shoes, and it snowed. It was like, Grandpa, you lived in Florida where it's flat and there's no snow.
Yeah. What are you talking about? Yeah. I think there would definitely be some funny elements to that, where it's like, in the middle, I think of how much worse, how difficult it was, and then how much worse it could have been in, my personal situation, where it's like, and there are plenty of jokes to come out of that, but yeah, where it's that it really is that kind of like growing fish story, or growing story, like how fishermen lying about how big their fish is, or lying about how deep the snow was, and like in some cases it's going to be like, man, I ran out of Netflix right in the middle of and
Son, you'll never believe how much, like, I ran out of TV shows to watch in the first week.
You'll never know the pain.
You'll never understand.
Yeah.
Taylor, there's no easy way to transition into what's next, but we're going to bring up, we have one more question about COVID that I want to throw at you later on. However, I'm curious as to what is something that you recently Googled?
What a question. What a question.
It's almost as if it happens every time we record a podcast. However, shout out to good friend of the podcast, Blake Brockman. He said that this is his favorite part of the show.
What?
To which I said, you don't think the whole show is the best part? So anyways, Taylor, what's something that you recently Googled?
Well, first of all, thank you, Blake. That means more than we can possibly express.
Nope, I just expressed it fully.
My bad. Tanner expressed it fully, and I spoke out of turn. I Googled because my wife and I have been watching through the Marvel movies recently. So she's never seen any of them, and I can't remember quite what brought it on, but we started with the first Captain America movie, and she looked over at me and she said, "Don't tell anyone this, but I really like this." And so that's why we're having this conversation now.
So now you're broadcasting it to our millions of listeners.
Millions of listeners. Millions. And so in order to kind of progress through this I Googled MCU, or for the layman, Marvel Cinematic Universe chronological order. So because it seems like with every release, this is true of Star Wars, this is true of, pretty much pick anything that has multiples of movies, and a lot of them are not necessarily made in the chronological order. And the same is true for the Marvel movies. And so I'm doing kind of a blend of when they were released and when they kind of actually take place in the chronological order. That's how we're going through them. But it's been a lot of fun, and because it's with my wife, and it's fun to see things through her eyes. Especially, she's got no grid for this before watching these, and so it's fun to kind of see these again through the eyes of her who has not seen them. So it's fun.
And some of these movies, to throw it back to last week's podcast, some of these movies are set in space. So we might be talking about them in the future. And I think we might have to do a Marvel draft where maybe we don't necessarily draft movies, but we might draft characters. So that's something to think about.
I like this.
However, Taylor,
yes.
I feel like you have a question that you would like to ask me.
Yeah. And also, I would like to add that at some point we probably just need to draft episodes of the podcast in which there were drafts, just to really get a good meta draft happening.
We'll draft the drafts.
We'll draft the draft episodes.
Ooh. I like where this is going. The future is bright.
The future is very bright for the JHTBH podcast. Anyway, Tanner, in response to your question, I would like to know what you have Googled recently.
It's a great question, Taylor. I haven't really thought about it. Recently, I Googled, and this kind of came out of the place of I was working on a project and I needed colors for it.
Yeah.
And so I Googled happiest countries in the world, and then I was going to take the colors of that country, and those would be the colors that I used for this project. So I Googled happiest countries in the world. And the answer for the third year in a row is Finland.
What?
And in my head, I could not locate Finland on a map. And so I did. I got out our globe, I found Finland, then I went to Google once again, and then I Googled, what is the weather like in Finland year-round? Thinking that if it's the happiest country in the world, it's going to be sunshine. It's going to be 364 days of sunshine.
Yeah,
Get this. I'm reading this off of the internet. It says this. In Finland, winter is long and cold throughout the country. It lasts almost 5 months even in Helsinki, which lies in the far south. Here, the temperature remains almost constantly around or below freezing from mid-November to late March. Can you imagine? Anyways, then I asked...
That just sounds like Iowa, where I'm at right now.
100%. And Iowa, it turns out, is not on the list of happiest countries in the world. So I asked, okay, then if the weather's so terrible, why is it the happiest country? And then I found this. It says it takes into account, this is, how they basically say this is the happiest country.
Yeah.
It says that it takes into account factors such as healthy life expectancy, freedom to make life choices, gross domestic product, generosity, social support from friends, perceived corruption, as well as recent emotions of the respondents, both good and bad. So apparently, besides the weather, in Finland, everything's great.
Wow.
Everything's great.
You
now,
know,
I can't say that I'm moving to Finland anytime soon.
No.
Not based on that weather.
No,
No thanks.
not at all. I will say, I wonder if this has anything to do with it. And this is for free, by the way. I don't remember why I know this. But Finland also invented the sauna.
Interesting.
Yeah, sauna comes out of Finland.
That is good to know.
Are they just
Really good to know.
Are they just sweating out their problems, you think?
I think so. You know what? If you were to ask me, Tanner, you can add 3 things to your house. 3 big things to your house.
Yeah.
I'm getting a basketball court, obviously.
Right.
Then I'm getting a lazy river, obviously. And then I'm putting in a sauna. Because, why not?
Yeah.
Why not?
I don't like saunas. I'll just go on the record as saying I like the idea of a sauna, and then like 2 minutes in, I'm like, why am I still in here?
Oh, so this is how I'm going to pass out. Got it. Okay. Good to know. Good to know. A sweat lodge.
Is there a pool nearby? Get me in there.
We used to do that in high school. My buddy, they had a condo on the beach, and we would go, and they would have a sauna. So we'd go like to the sauna, run out of the sauna into the cold pool, and then straight into the hot tub, and then we would just like keep doing that. And I feel as though that has done quite the damage to like hopefully that explains a few things to the listener.
Yeah.
Taylor, I have a question of the week for you. This question of the week was not submitted by a listener, although it was submitted by me and I listen to our podcast, so in some ways it is.
Yeah.
But my question for you kind of goes back to our conversation about COVID.
Yeah.
And it has been a year. I mean, it's been we can't say that enough.
Yep.
And I don't want to take it lightly or make any kind of joke about COVID, because it is a very serious thing. And I have friends who have lost family members, and we've all lost people through it. But my question for you and for the listeners as well is, like, if you could go back to the start of the pandemic, what would you do differently?
Yeah. That is an easy one for me. Well, I mean, it's a hard thing to consider, but it's an easy answer for me. I would run to food and television less, and I would pick up my Bible a whole lot more. I, on the back end, like in the late summer, early fall, really started to, not that it wasn't happening at all, but I really started to get into a better rhythm of being in the Word of God. And I just really, looking back, started to consider the question, if what Paul says is true, that God's Word has everything for us pertaining to life and godliness. And then to Timothy, it prepares us for every good work, not some good works, but every single one, and encourages and admonishes and is the very breath of God, which he also says in the same passage, 2 Timothy 3:16. Then there's no better way I can spend my time, and that always is going to push me to continue to want to have good conversations with people, to be in relationship with people, to glorify God with my life. And I would run to food a lot less. I'd run to TV a lot less, and I'd pick up my Bible a whole lot more, with a lot more intentional kind of discipline. How about you?
I think that is a perfect answer, and I think also kind of we mentioned this earlier. Is just like there's grace in that.
Yeah.
Of
course. Right.
None of us have done a pandemic before. I would say something very similar. I would run to food less and TV a little bit less.
I saw some good shows.
Think what I wish I would have done was on March 9th, I would have ordered a stationary bike and just had that in my house to ride while I'm watching TV or while I'm snacking on the food.
Yes.
But no, I mean, honestly, that's my true answer. But in the last couple of months here, I've been been faster to turn to the Word of God. And that has made a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just, it's like figuring out those healthy rhythms, and it's difficult. It's hard.
Yeah, it is.
But, through it all, man, I am, as some would say, I'm just happy to be here.
And I would say it too. Just happy to be here.
Just happy to be here. Hey, this was episode 43 of the Just Happy to Be Here podcast. Thank you so much for listening and for subscribing. If you have a question that you would like for us to try to tackle or answer or dance around, send that to writtentospeak@gmail.com. Or if you want to share with us something that you've recently Googled, send that to writtentospeak@gmail.com. Thank you again for tuning in. I am just happy to be here. Taylor?
Just happy to be here, and I'll talk to you soon, Tanner.
Talk to you soon, man. Well, thank you for listening to this episode of the Just Happy to Be Here podcast. A special thanks to my patrons for making this podcast possible. If you would like to support the podcast and the mission of Written to Speak, well, I wouldn't be mad about it. You can visit patreon.com/writtentospeak, or you can visit the Patreon tab at writtentospeak.com. As always, thank you so much for listening to this podcast and for supporting our show. Taylor and I are forever grateful, and we will be back very soon with another episode of the Just Happy to Be Here podcast.